Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing one of the rarest possible Pokemon in the entire Ultra Summer Cup that is also one of the strongest, and that is level 50 XL Toadscroll. During the Adventure Week event, Toadscroll was a very common spawn in forest and grassland biomes. So I spent hours and hours during this event grinding Toadscroll candies with a tier 3 Mega active. And after doing a bunch of trades as well, I now have a fully maxed out level 50 Toadscroll. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at what it can do in the Ultra Summer Cup. Hopping into game number 1, and our target has been acquired, Toadscroll into Bellybolt. Bellybolt is staying in this matchup. They're going to look to bank a parabolic charge for later and save switch into Credilli. Now, I don't have a great response to Credilli in the back, so I fire off an Earth Power to get some chip, and then bring in Kingdra. In this specific meta, Earth Power is preferred over Seed Bomb, as Earth Power is a really nice shields down move into Bellybolt, and on top of that, Earth Power is also really nice against the fire types like Skeledirge. Here, I do miscount, unfortunately. I should have thrown the Outrage and not had to go down a shield, but either way, even though I'm down a shield, I will exit with some energy and switch advantage, which is very important for me. Back in comes the Bellybolt, and now I have a 50-50 chance to lower their attack by 2 stages. I do get it. In the back, they have Lapras, and there's just no way for my opponent to win this game, as Bellybolt proves to be an incredibly effective core pairing for Toadscroll. Bellybolt does an amazing job at shutting down all of the Pokemon that Toadscroll doesn't necessarily want to see. My opponent is going to give up an early shield on the parabolic charge, but now that I've boosted up my XL Bellybolt, I just no longer have to shield in this matchup. I can just spam out parabolic charge after parabolic charge, and I can very comfortably close out this game with the Toadscroll. They even no shield as well. In comes the Bellybolt, and let's see Bellybolt absolutely flounder. They go for the parabolic charge trainer that is triple resisted, but they don't have a better option. They're going to fire off one final charge attack. That's the Zap Cannon, and that just does pathetic damage. Toadscroll just absolutely bullies Bellybolt. Back in comes the Lapras. I get to fire off the Wrap and just fully mud slap down to take the game 1 win. Moving to game number 2, picking up a pretty okay lead, Toadscroll against Shadow Victreebel. Now, Toadscroll can win the Zero Shield by landing an Earth Power. However, it's always a tough baiting game of will the opponent shield or will they try and call a bait. I decide that I'm going to go for the Wrap bait here, anticipating my opponent to shield, but that call proves to be a bad one as they no shield and I'm forced to go down a shield. That is really not great. Leaf Blade is going to be shielded, they're going to save switch into Jellicent, and I have an amazing response available with Bellybolt. Jellicent does do a pretty good job up energy of making life uncomfortable for Bellybolt, as Shadow Ball is able to hit for some very significant damage. However, boosting up my defense with Bellybolt does mean that I'm not going to be in danger of getting knocked out by the second move. I'll get to farm down and exit with energy, even though I will be very low. So I will get the farm down here. I shouldn't get KO'd by one move from the Victreebel. They bring in the Victreebel. I'm not quite sure what happened there. I didn't get the parabolic. I guess I just didn't click the move when I should have, but it's a Skeledirge in the back, so I'll be able to close out this game with a win, as unfortunately, Skeledirge really does not have a good time against Kingdra. Kingdra, it's a really effective safe switch in this meta. Obviously, the 50-50 chances at the Octazooka debuffs are just so incredibly nice. They farm up a massive amount of energy with that Skeledirge. I fire off the Octazooka. They will commit the shield. Again, we do not get the debuff, but I can just close out the game with Toadscroll. Shadow Ball will pick up the KO. In comes the Toadscroll. Toadscroll gets that Mud Slap farm down, so the Incinerate does not register. We Mud Slap down the Victreebel and move to 2-0 in the set. Pretty spicy lead from the opponent in the next match, leading into XL Oranguru. They save switch into Decidueye, and honestly, Decidueye is a weak spot for this team. I do not have a hard check to Decidueye, and especially shielding a Spirit Shackle is going to make this even more difficult, as now my opponent will be able to make it to a Frenzy Plant. Frenzy Plant, even with my +1 defense, would do a lot of damage, so I decide to double shield the Bellybolt. I really don't like expending all those Protect Shields on Bellybolt, but so far it seems like they are pretty weak to it. My opponent is now going to bring out Skeledirge, and things are suddenly looking a lot better. as by protecting the Bellybolt and boosting up its defense more and more and more, I'm going to be able to gain a lot of ground against my opponent. Skeleturge will get to fire off the Shadow Ball. I have no shields to hide behind, but Bellybolt is just too bulky after boosting its defense. There's the switch to Oranguru. Parabolic Charge is going to land, and now I get to switch in the Toadscroll. Toadscroll, they have 2 shields, so I'm probably going to have to go for the Wrap bait. They go for the Trailblaze. Oranguru has great bulk, but the issue is none of its charge attacks hit particularly hard. Trailblaze, Brutal Swing, neither one is going to be a big problem for the Toadscroll. I don't throw on the greatest timing here. I just want to put pressure on my opponent and get shields down, because if I can get shields down, then I should be in a winning position. They will get to fire off this Brutal Swing. That's going to be getting me low. There's the simultaneous switch in, Kingdra into the Skeleturge, and unfortunately, there's just no way for them to beat the Kingdra, so I will get to farm everything down, as even if the Skeleturge fired its move, it just wouldn't KO. Dream lead in the next match, Toadscroll against Gastrodon. They safe switch into a Shadow Kingdra. I don't have a clear response to a Shadow Kingdra safe swap, so my plan is just to chip them with a Wrap and then bring in my own Kingdra. My opponent is going to make it to an Outrage, so I will have to respect it. They go for an Octazooka anyway, fishing for a debuff, but the coin flip luck is on my side. Back in comes the Gastrodon. They are never ever going to be shielding Gastrodon, knowing it's going to get completely walled by Toadscroll. So the correct play is always just to full send the Outrage. So Outrage is able to land. They can fire off the Earth Power and knock me out, but that's very okay. They end up body slamming, so maybe they're on Water Pulse. They send in Tentacruel as their final Pokemon, and they are ABA weak to the Toadscroll. I could have sent in the Toadscroll and just swept with the Toadscroll at this point, but I figured I have the Bellybolt in the back. I may as well put it to some use, so I banked the Octazooka, and now Bellybolt will get to boost and boost and boost. And I am a +1 Bellybolt trainer. I do not care what you throw at me. They go for the Hail Mary Blizzard, and it just does not matter. Bellybolt hangs on, making the Parabolic Charge, forcing the final shield, and now I can just farm all the way down with Toadscroll. Toadscroll is going to get the full Mud Slap down. They can fire off the Scald, fishing for the debuff. They get the debuff, but this Body Slam is just going to do laughable damage. Body Slam into the Toadscroll doesn't even put me into the red HP. Toadscroll gets the full farm down. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Hopping into the final match, looking for the 5-0 set, and it's a pretty okay lead leading into Skeleturge. Skeleturge players really like to throw on alignment against Toadscroll, and the free Mud Slaps definitely add up. For them, I guess the benefit is they're able to get their Torch Song up faster, but I'm always happy to get extra Mud Slaps, because that's quite a bit of damage. I will go for a double shield, and now I'm going to look to go for a bit of a fun play. I'm going to throw a Mud Slap, defer the Incinerate damage onto Kingdra, and snipe down before they're able to switch out. Opponent now brings out Bellybolt. Bellybolt will fire off the Parabolic Charge right away before I'm able to get to the Outrage. But this honestly works out pretty nicely, as I have my own Bellybolt in the back that's very healthy, and anytime you have a Bellybolt at a health advantage, you're going to be able to win against an opposing Bellybolt. On top of that, I still do have the Toadscroll. It's a bit of a judgment call whether I bring the Toadscroll and fire off the Earth Power, or whether I just bring in my own Bellybolt. I decide that it gives me more options to save the move on the Toadscroll and just bring in my own Bellybolt, so I will bring in the Bellybolt and just look to fire off the Parabolic Charge. I want to boost up my defense, so that way when my opponent inevitably fires off the Zap Cannon, it won't be quite as threatening. Here is the Zap Cannon from the Bellybolt. I'm able to take that damage, but my attack does get lowered. That is definitely not ideal. I will fire off the Parabolic Charge. Parabolic Charge will pick up the knockout. In the back is Jellicent. I bank the Parabolic, send in the Toadscroll, and will fire off the Earth Power. Earth Power will inflict some okay neutral damage. Earth Power does get a defense drop. So now my opponent has built up to the back-to-back serfs, and it'll come down to charge attack priority. But the good news for me is that's a CMP tie that Bellybolt wins, and that's exactly why I banked the move. So Parabolic Charge KOs the Jellicent, and we get the 5-0 set to go back to the 3200s. We move to the next match, and it's a negative lead Toadscroll into Genesect. As with most Genesect in this cup, this is the Shock Drive Genesect, meaning that its Technoblast will be electric. In this matchup, obviously, they're just going to be spamming out X-Scissors. I overfarm slightly to avoid a catch, and they catch anyway. Great prediction by my opponent. Octazooka lands on the Tentacruel, and I do get the coin flip, as now their attack is debuffed by 2 stages. Since they're -2 and I double resist Scald, Scald will not knock out here. They're forced to go for the big move, and that reveals that they have Sludge Wave. Now that I know that they don't have Blizzard, I have nothing to fear with my Toadscroll. They're -2, all they can do at best is hit for neutral. They go for the Scald, that does get a debuff, but it does basically no damage. So now my attack has been debuffed as well, but I'm very comfortable tanking another Scald. I'm debuffed, so I'm hoping my opponent will not shield. So I'm going to fire off the Earth Power, looking to land it through the shields. Earth Power does get shielded, that's not ideal. In comes Bellybolt to immediately be chipped with the X-Scissor. X-Scissor will do solid damage to the Bellybolt. In the back is a Zekrom, and this is going to be a difficult game. Zekrom going to be double resisting Parabolic Charge. That's not going to do a whole lot of damage, but the thing is Zekrom, even though its typing is amazing, it has very poor bulk. Its stats are not good in the Ultra League, so even though it should be a dominant matchup, Bellybolt puts up a ferocious fight. In comes Toadscroll, able to get the farm down. My opponent is very clearly going to try and win this game off of fast move pressure. That's why they didn't throw a move on Zekrom. It's going to be close. Toadscroll versus the Genesect. Toadscroll gets the farm down, and we clutch a dramatic win. There's trouble on the lead in the next match, and its name is Virizion. Technically, Virizion is a core breaker for this team, as it has a winning matchup against all 3 members of this team. However, honestly, in practice, Virizion was not that difficult to get rid of. The first step, if I see it on the lead, is just to stay in with the Toadscroll, because Toadscroll can just spam out these wrap debuffs and make life more and more uncomfortable for Virizion. Virizion goes for Leaf Blade number 2, I get to fire off another wrap, and if they no-shield this is going to put the Virizion pretty low. Virizion is now deep into the red HP. They will exit with a move loaded, but honestly, I'm pretty okay with that. Leaf Blade is going to pick up the knockout. I send out Kingdra, and they're going to save switch into a Hex Skeleturge. Oftentimes, a Skeleturge save switch is an attempt to lure out a Bellybolt, so that way some kind of water type can sweep in the back. So I'm not going to bring out the Bellybolt. I'm just going to stay in with the Kingdra. Kingdra will fire off the Octazooka, 50-50 chance at the debuff, but it does not come through this time. That's very unfortunate for me. I do survive a Shadow Ball, but I'm deciding to prioritize Kingdra. Unfortunately, Kingdra will not get the farm down. My opponent could have made another Shadow Ball, so I'm forced to fire off the Octazooka. They are going to let that through. What do they have in the back? They have Tentacruel. I send in the Bellybolt, and I'm immediately met with Virizion. Virizion goes for the Leaf Blade. They should even make another Leaf Blade, as I cannot get the farm down before they're able to get the move. So now they've gotten a lot of chip damage into the Bellybolt. However, Bellybolt is getting a massive farm down, and I do exit with a ton of energy. So now I get to fire off the Parabolic Charge. I just need to land some damage onto the Tentacruel. I make Parabolic Charge number 2, and I don't see a sneak. Did my opponent CMP tie here? It looks like they did, and because of that, now I think that I can win. Because I'm going to get to send in Kingdra, and it's just going to be a race to the charge move. My opponent should not be anywhere close to a Sludge Wave, and that's going to allow me to win the game. We get the Outrage, KO the Tentacruel, and secure the win. We see a tricky lead in the next match, and it's going to be a Fortress. We already saw the Genesect lead. Fortress is a lot bulkier. The good news for Toadscroll in this matchup is that Fortress's charge attacks are completely walled. Rock Tomb, Earthquake, Sand Tomb, they're all going to be resisted. So whereas against Genesect I had to switch out, against Fortress I can actually stay in. Fortress will go for the Earthquake. That's not going to do a whole lot. I send out Kingdra. Unfortunately, Kingdra is very, very slow to get to charge attacks. That is the only downside of Kingdra, so I can't get a move before they get a Rock Tomb. Now they're going to pivot into their own Kingdra. I build up to the Outrage. I debated Octazooka baiting like my opponent did to me earlier, but I felt it's just too risky. I need to guarantee the shield. So now I do get the shield, which is quite nice. I bring in the Toadscroll. I go for the Wrap, but I think I should have committed to the Earth Power because Wrap is not a threatening move. And now I have to send in Bellybolt, and my opponent gets a lot of opportunities to debuff my attack with Octazooka. The first time, I do get lucky. They don't get the debuff, but the second time, I may not be so lucky. I've lost so much health in the Bellybolt that I feel that I have really misplayed this. And unfortunately, there is the debuff, and the cost of my misplays is now going to come back to bite me. Normally, Bellybolt beats Drampa, but unfortunately, at -2 attack, I am definitely not beating Drampa. I will fire off the Hail Mary Zap Cannon. They shield it, and at this point, I will resign the match. Hopping into the final match, and Toadscroll is greeted with an unfortunate lead. It's Virizion back for revenge. But as before, I'm just going to play out the zeros and just see what Toadscroll can do, as Toadscroll does a pretty nice job of spamming out wraps and generally making life uncomfortable for the Virizion. Virizion will get to fire off the Leaf Blades, but that's very, very okay. They go for Leaf Blade number 1, and they're going to follow it up with Leaf Blade number 2. Something I'm noticing is that I feel like I'm healthier against this Virizion than I was against the previous opponent. And after looking it up after the fact, I believe there is actually a double kick bulk point that I can get against certain Virizion spreads, where their Leaf Blade number 3 actually does not KO, and they're forced to fire off this move, or I could actually make a third wrap and force a shield. So they're forced to fire off yet another Leaf Blade. I can farm down with the Kingdra, and being able to bulk point them like that was just absolutely amazing. They send in Tentacruel, and I'm not baiting. I'm going straight for the outrage. I want to guarantee damage or a shield. Opponent calls the Octazooka. In the back, they have their own Bellybolt. They will get to put up a parabolic charge first, but now I get the 50-50 chance at the Octazooka 2-stage debuff to completely change the game. So I fire off the Octazooka. Will luck be on my side? It lands. No debuff, but the good news is even without a debuff, I should still be in a winning position. I'm going to be no-shielding my Bellybolt as they fire off the parabolic, and I can just look to go for parabolic charges of my own. But first, I want to try and farm up. The reason being, I want energy to threaten the Tentacruel when it gets back onto the field. This parabolic charge will not KO, but my opponents will not KO me either. I'm expecting a switch into the Tentacruel. There it is, and now I will get to fire off the parabolic and just continue to make my Bellybolt more and more difficult to remove from the field of play. I will put up a shield here because I have to use my shields at some point. They're rapidly approaching their next Scald. I switch into Kingdra as they fire it off and catch the double resisted move. They undercharge the Scald, hoping for a farm down, but it's Kingdra and the Dragon Breath that get the farm down, and my opponent will concede the match. All in all, while this is by no means an easy team to acquire for the Ultra Summer Cup, I think it's a really strong team. Toadscroll proves to be an amazing core breaker into so many teams. Kingdra is just an incredibly effective generalist. It was good last rotation, and it's very good this Ultra Summer rotation as well. And Bellybolt, it just does a great job, much like Dedenne does for Toadscroll in the Great League, of covering the things that it doesn't want to see. It does great into all of the bug types, it shuts down all of the flyers, basically anything that could give Toadscroll trouble. Bellybolt is going to have a pretty commanding matchup. Basically, the only thing that would be difficult for the both is Gliscor. I haven't really seen any Gliscors in this meta. If Gliscor picks up, then obviously this team could be a little less effective, but for now, this team honestly felt like it was cutting through the meta like a hot butter knife. This team worked amazingly. Obviously, I know a lot of people aren't going to have the Toadscroll because not everyone lives within driving distance of a state forest, but if you do have the Toadscroll XLs, I highly recommend the team because this team has worked amazingly in the few sets that I've got to play with it so far. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and especially so because that was a brutal grind during Adventure Week to get all these XLs. And an extra special thank you to our channel members here on YouTube. The support guys provide to the channel is just unbelievable, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.